This creature is real. It exists right now, somewhere between 270 and 1,300 meters beneath the ocean's surface, in water cold enough to slow a human heart to a stop. Mitsukurina Ostoni is hunting. It does not chase. It does not pursue. It waits, and then its jaw launches forward, independent of its skull, accelerating at speeds that register as a blur on high-speed cameras, capable of extending nearly 10% of the animal's entire body length in under 300 milliseconds. It is not a bite. It is a deployment. Most sharks evolved this mechanism over tens of millions of years. The goblin shark did not evolve toward it. It never evolved away from it either. Its lineage is 125 million years old. It was ancient, before the first dinosaur went extinct. What follows is a record of what happened when one specimen was introduced to a controlled observation environment. The researchers had studied sharks for decades. They were not prepared. The juvenile arrived in a sealed transport unit from a deep-sea trawl survey off the coast of Suruga Bay, Japan, a region long associated with the species' known habitat corridor. At intake, the specimen measured 82 centimeters, no larger than a man's forearm, from elbow to fingertip. Its weight, comparable to a domestic house cat, 3.4 kilograms. But weight was irrelevant. Weight told researchers nothing useful. What the initial biometric scans confirmed was the skin. The goblin shark carries no pigment in the conventional sense. Its outer dermis is semi-translucent, thin enough that the capillary networks beneath the surface bleed through. A vivid, almost artificial pink. Observation confirmed it. The creature was not pink. It was a vessel so thinly wrapped that its own blood gave it color. Every pulse of the cardiovascular system was, in effect, visible. This was the first anomaly logged, not the last. The snout, the rostrum, extended well beyond the jawline, flattened laterally, studded with electroreceptive pores called ampullae of Lorenzini in the specimen's natural environment. These organs detect the bioelectric fields of prey hidden in silt. In the containment tank, they registered the building's electrical wiring through 40 centimeters of reinforced acrylic. Feeding trials introduced live sardines. The specimen did not pursue them. It oriented. It stilled. And then, in the time it takes to blink, the jaw extended, not the head. The jaw projected outward from the skull on articulated ligament systems, snatching prey at a distance the sardines did not know was reachable. The containment team reviewed the footage 3 times before anyone spoke. Senior researchers' field notation logged 2247 hours. The readings suggested it was growing differently. At 63 days, the specimen had grown to 1.4 meters, larger than a standard office desk. The growth curve was not unusual by shark standards. What was unusual was where the growth was concentrating. The rostrum had extended disproportionately at the specimen's current length. The snout now preceded the body by a margin that disrupted depth perception calibrations in the observation camera. Staff noted difficulty judging the animal's true position in the tank. The snout registered in one location while the body occupied another. The first containment adjustment came at day 67. The original unit, designed for animals up to 2 meters, was found to be insufficient. Not due to size, due to electroreception range. The ampullae of Lorenzini, now covering the full length of an extended rostrum, were sensitive enough to detect pressure fluctuations from the ventilation system 3 rooms away. The specimen had begun orienting toward the east wall, specifically toward the junction box behind a steel panel, for 14 minutes at a time. Goblin sharks do not have complex cortical structure. This was understood. Reviewed literature was consistent. The species was a passive ambush predator, dependent on drift and opportunistic contact, rather than active cognition. The east wall behavior was logged as environmental noise response. It was not revisited. This was, in retrospect, an error. The specimen now massed approximately 11 kilograms, heavier than a standard carry-on suitcase, and its jaw deployment speed had increased by a measurable margin during a routine feeding event. The projection extended past the estimated maximum range for an animal of its size. Containment protocols were updated. The protocols did not account for what came next. It was the electroreception that changed the character of the observation. By month 4, the specimen had developed, or revealed, sensitivity that exceeded documented parameters for the species by a significant margin. Staff entering the corridor adjacent to the containment unit reported the animal tracking them through the wall, not in response to sound, not in response to vibration, in response to their heartbeats. The bioelectric field produced by a human cardiovascular system is measurable. It is faint. It dissipates rapidly through air and solid matter. Through water, however, and through the walls of a tank filled with it, the gradient is sufficient. The specimen had been mapping staff, movement patterns, arrival times, feeding schedule. The research team classified this as associative conditioning, Pavlovian in nature, stimulus response. Dr. Hargrove, the lead behavioral analyst, submitted a separate notation that was not included in the official log. The notation read, "It is not responding to us as a food source. It is responding to us as a pattern. There is a difference. We should understand the difference before we proceed." The notation was filed. The morning rotation continued as scheduled. The specimen was observed stationary, rostrum pressed to the east wall, for 4 hours and 11 minutes without movement. When the ventilation junction failed the following morning, a fault later attributed to stress fractures in the wall mounting, no connection was formally established. Observations continued. At 7 months, the specimen measured 2.9 meters and massed in excess of 90 kilograms. The jaw, in full deployment, extended 31 centimeters beyond the skull, a distance that placed objects well outside the tank's apparent boundary, within theoretical reach of a projection event. Containment had been reinforced twice. The acrylic was now rated for direct impact loads beyond the animal's estimated strike force. The electrical shielding reduced external signal interference. Staff rotations were staggered to disrupt temporal patterns. It was on a Tuesday, the 14th, during a low staffing shift, that the acrylic registered its first stress fracture. The force sensor data showed no impact, no strike, no deployment event. The fracture was internal, originating from within the tank wall itself, at a point corresponding precisely to the location the specimen had been orienting toward for 11 weeks. Structural analysis of the panel submitted 2 days later offered no mechanical explanation for a fracture of that geometry originating at that vector. It was logged as material fatigue. The specimen had not moved during the event. It had been still, rostrum forward, electroreceptors presumably active. Presumably, observation footage from the 14th was reviewed. In the 97 minutes prior to the fracture, the animal's positioning had shifted incrementally, 0.2 degrees per minute, in a pattern that, when plotted, described the exact load-bearing geometry of the wall segment that failed. Evacuation of the facility was not ordered. The fracture was hairline. The tank was otherwise intact. Staff returned the following morning. The specimen was at the east wall. It was still oriented toward the corridor, and the question that no reviewed literature, no filed report, no taxonomic record, no entry under Mitsukurina Ostoni in any published database had ever thought to ask, was now the only question that mattered. If a creature, 125 million years old, never needed to evolve its jaw, what else has it never needed to change?